Going to do a little fact and fiction. Going to spend about 15 minutes on fact and fiction. Here's the fact behind my book. These are the 1946 Cleveland Indians. For some reason, Eli missed the team photo. It may have to do with the fact that he was Amish, but he doesn't show up in the team photo. I'm fully cognizant of that. But they are basically the framework for the entire story of Eli Weaver. Now, the fact, as far as the characters inside the book, first would be Bill Beck. That is my baseball hero. He bought the team back in June of 1946, and that's where the story of Eli begins. Vet bought a team that was in 5th place. It was not doing well. It was not doing well on the field. Actually, it was a team that had really good pitching, but very little hitting. Does that resonate anywhere with the situation we're in from time to time now? And he had a team that was not doing well at the box office. The 46 Indians were splitting their time between 2 ballparks. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a bit. But that inherited a situation that was full of potential, but had very little means of delivering the potential. So, for those of you who have ever been to a ball game, all of you who have ever been to a ball game, who have ever got a giveaway at a ball game, who have ever seen a promotional thing or fun thing happen on the field at a ball game, you are a beneficiary of the career of Bill Beck. He's the guy where all of this started. Using the ballpark to do more than just watch a ball game, but entertain the people who were in the park and try to make sure that something other than the ball game would lure them back to the ballpark. Actually, Beck had a mathematical formula worked out. He had a formula that showed him how people would come back to the ballpark if they just saw a ball game, if they saw a ball game with fireworks, if they saw a ball game with a giveaway, if they saw a ball game with a giveaway and fireworks. And that's not bad for a guy who legally never graduated from high school and attended college somehow for a year or so, but never graduated from college. He took night classes at Loyola. He took night classes at Northwestern University, and he took classes in agronomy. He took classes in engineering. He took classes in economics and also towards a CPA kind of thing. Okay, so what that did was basically educate himself in every aspect of the business of running a ball club. And that is exactly what he grew up to do, with mostly other people's money. Okay? He never had the amount of money it would take to buy a ball club, but man, was he a good talker. And he was a great motivator, and he was able to bring people on board, and that's where this story, the fact of this story goes in just a second. As he waltzed through the city of Cleveland in the early summer of 1946, looking for loans that he could get to put his ball club bid together. Now, Vet had 2 of the greatest players of the era on his ball club. On the left is Lou Boudreau. He was the boy manager. He became the manager of the team in 1942 at the tender age of 24 years old. And that's because the owner of the team at that time didn't want to pay a player and a manager when he figured he could get both for one price. So that was basically a marriage of convenience, and Boudreau was one of the great players in the American League. He was an all-star several times. However, his boss, starting in 1946, Mr. Beck, thought that, to put it politely, Boudreaux was a lot better player than he was a manager. And that's another story for another quote. On the right is Bob Feller, arguably the greatest right-handed pitcher of all time. 266 wins over his career. Had he not signed up and joined the U.S. Navy, basically on December 8th, 1941, he might have won somewhere close to 400 games. Depending on who you talk to, whether it's a conservative or a liberal estimate, since Feller missed 1942, 43, 44, and almost all of 1945, people project that Feller could have won a minimum of 60 games in that time and a maximum of probably around 100. So Feller's career, although it only showed 266 wins, still got him to the Hall of Fame, and it showed great honor upon the United States of America because Feller served in combat zones on the battleship USS Alabama and won several battle stars as a chief petty officer. So here's Beck. He's got two of the greatest stars in baseball. His team is still in 5th place, and it's headed for 6th place. He's got a problem. He's going to have to find something besides all his Ladies' Day things and his fireworks and all the things he tries to make sure that he can get people to the park. He's going to need better players, but he can't afford to pay to get them. So we'll figure out how that's going to work for him here in a minute. Now, if you're from Northeast Ohio, another part of the fact behind my book is the presence of this man, Hal Leibovitz. Hal worked for several of the Cleveland newspapers, and I came across his work as I scanned through the Cleveland News. It went defunct in 1960, I think. And I looked at the Cleveland News from June through September of 1946 as I was writing this book. At the time, this Hall of Fame member, as a writer, was basically Jimmy Olsen. Hal basically was a Cub reporter in the truest sense. Most of his articles at that time in the Cleveland News had to do with bowling leagues and high school sports. That's all he was doing. Now, in the autobiography of Bill Veeck, Veeck notes that as he was scrambling from bank to bank trying to get the loans so he could purchase the Cleveland Indians, only one person in town recognized him, and it was Leibovitz. Leibovitz was trailing him from bank to bank, and so that is the fact of the story. The fiction of the story that I introduce in my book is Leibovitz obviously told everybody he worked with about this story of Beck buying the Indians, and his boss promptly thanked him, probably gave him a little bonus, and put him back writing about bowling leagues and high school sports. In my story, that gets not only trailed by Leibovitz, but Leibovitz is able to talk his bosses into covering the story of Eli Weaver. And so he is another factual character within my story. Okay, all you Cleveland Indians fans out there, how many of you remember Buster Mills? Good, Buster. Buster was a pretty mediocre ball player. He got hurt all the time. And he lasted, though, as you can see, 7 years in the major leagues. He had a pretty decent career. Now, if you think his batting average would be pretty good, please note that he rarely, I think he only had one season where he had more than 300 at-bats. He was a player who got hurt a lot, and so he was a bench player basically his entire career. Now, here's one thing I kind of feel a little bit bad about. Buster is a device in my book. For those of you who have read the book, Buster is a coach on the team. As you can see, in 1946, he hit 273. He only played 9 games before he really did become a coach when Beck bought the team. Although it's not specifically stated, I don't say it out loud in the book. What I have done is I've turned Buster into a coach because Eli Weaver, his son, my fictional ball player. And so Buster becomes Eli's mentor and best buddy. And so, like I said, I turned this very nice man, probably, into a device. Sorry about that, I guess, a little bit. But if you notice, for those of you who have read the book, for those watching in and those here, if you've read the book, about 8 or 9 times in the course of the book, a chapter will begin with Eli and Buster playing catch. And that's a device that I use to move the plot of the book forward. So either when they're playing catch before a game and getting warmed up, either Buster and Eli are recapping what happened in the chapter before, or they're leading you into what's going to happen in this next chapter. So to Buster and his family, sorry. But it worked, I think. So, as I mentioned before, Cleveland was the only city at this time with 2 ballparks housing its major league team. League Park, where we're sitting today, and also Cleveland Municipal Stadium. What's interesting about the 2 ballparks is, as you'll see if you walk the grounds at all, just outside our window here is the 290-foot right field fence, which conforms to the neighborhood, and where the kids would stand out on Lexington Avenue waiting for home runs to be hit over that 39-foot screen. Left field, which is right down to my left, is 375 feet away from home plate, which there's no major league ballpark that's anywhere close to that day, these days in left field. And then center field, out that direction where the scoreboard was, that was somewhere around 460 feet from home plate. Again, completely out of line with dimensions you find in a ballpark today, but this ballpark fits neatly into 2 city blocks. At its height, it seated about 25,000 fans. Okay? And then, of course, downtown, the big ballpark downtown, Cleveland Municipal Stadium, which Bill Beck put about 80,000 fans into. Now, this book takes place in 1946, which was the last season of League Park. And that's because Beck decided with dollar signs in his eyes, he didn't need to try to draw 20,000 people into a ballpark that fits shoehorned into a neighborhood when he could put 80,000 people downtown in a gigantic ballpark where he could make a lot of money, put on big fireworks shows, because as you can see, there's really nowhere around here to put on a fireworks show, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway because this ballpark never had lights. So night games here were an impossibility, and Beck, a new owner of his time, wanted to make sure that he could access people after work. So, another thing about this ballpark, with right field being so tempting, only 290 feet away, it drew a lot of left-handed power hitters here who loved playing here. Babe Ruth hit his 500th home run right there onto Lexington Avenue. It drew pitchers who loved to keep the ball out inside the right-handed hitters so that they would pull it into that vast area out there and it would just die as a fly ball. Cy Young played here twice, once with the Spiders in the 1890s when this was a wooden ballpark, and then he also played here at the end of his career with the Cleveland Nats. And then, if you didn't see my post earlier this morning on social media, right out there by home plate, 81 years ago today, Joe DiMaggio got a hit It was his 56th consecutive game he had hit. The record still stands. And the next night, he was stopped at Cleveland Stadium 41. So a lot of history in this place. As far as Cleveland Stadium was concerned, as far as the facts behind Cleveland Stadium, hitters of all types hated it for the first 15 years it was in existence. Because, as you can see in this old picture, there's no outfield fence. It didn't exist. So the whole expanse of the outfield was even more wide open than this, and there was no chance to hit a home run 290 feet at Old Cleveland Stadium. Of course, one little fact for you to add in. The year after my book occurs in 1946, Bill Veeck in 1947 did put the first fence in Cleveland Municipal Stadium. And how? He put a chain link fence up from almost foul pole to foul pole. And the distances were very easy to reach for most hitters. It said 375, 400 feet, that kind of thing. The other thing that Bill Veeck did that he really didn't tell anybody about, but he and Marshall Bosser, his groundskeeper, knew, there were sleeves inserted in the ground about every 5 to 10 feet. So that when the Yankees were in town, with their powerful hitters at night, the ground crew would move the fence back. The signs would still say 275 feet. When the St. Louis Browns came to town, and a team that really couldn't hit, they brought the fences in for the light-hitting Cleveland Indians who hit better than the St. Louis Browns. So it didn't take long, maybe only a month or two before it was discovered, but my friend Bill Veeck just loved to say, I do not try to break the rules, merely to test their elasticity. So that is the story of the two ballparks. The other thing about this ballpark that was great was that the trolleys from downtown Cleveland served this ballpark all the time. And that's because at one time, the owner of the ball club owned the trolley line. So he made quite a bit of money off the tickets to the game and getting people to and from the game. Where we're sitting right now, the trolley car is right in front of it. The ticket house is right over there behind us. And there you can see the wall that slid back and forth. And so after the game, when people left the ballpark, they were able to walk across the field, which is pretty nice, and walk out the metal doors in the right field wall that were wide open, leading them straight to the streetcars. That's the fact behind my book. Now there's the fiction. My man Eli Weaver, where did he come from? Eli Weaver is a composite of some Amish folks I've known over the years, from growing up in Geauga County and from my work experience being down in Wayne and Holmes County. Charlie Mannion, when he was with the Indians, used to use a phrase about Jim Thome. He always said Jimmy was country strong. Well, what I found in hanging out with some of these Amish folks over the years is that they were country strong. When I was in college, I was on the ground crew. Half the crew were English, us, and the other half were Amish. And we play wiffle ball every day at lunch. And they invited us out to play softball at their place. So we said, we're fine, 20, 21-year-old strapping young lads, we're going to go play the Amish at their place and show them some things about playing softball. So we got there, and they were just mowing the field with a rotary mower that was, about 10 feet wide, about that tall, being pulled by two horses. So the outfield grass was cut to a very nice, easy 6 to 8 inches, okay, where the ball would disappear when it was hit. And these guys just kept pumping out doubles and triples and inside the park home runs, and they were country strong. We lost something like 25-6, but it was pretty embarrassing. And so ever since then, that question has been in my mind. Does somebody from that background, with that kind of strength and speed, would they have a chance if they actually got a chance? And so that idea just got tucked away for a long, long time, until March of 2020, when the governor of the state of Ohio told me I couldn't go anywhere, I couldn't do anything, and I had to stay home. And that's when I pulled that idea out and started working on it. Now, the name Eli Weaver, I have a friend down in Holmes County by the name of Dennis Mullet. If you're ever down in Berlin, be sure to stop at Boyd and Worthman Restaurant. It's where the locals eat. And Dennis and his team will take care of you very well. But Dennis said, when he saw the book and saw the premise of it, he said, "I'm so glad you chose a name like Eli Weaver." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, it's pretty uncommon, so it would stand out here in Amish country." I said, "Oh, how uncommon?" So he goes into his office, and he brings back this thing that looks like a telephone book. It's like this thick, it's this wide, and it's a directory of the Amish in Ohio. Okay? This is how they're listed. They're listed by surname, they're listed by wife of the man, they're listed by children's names, and you can sort it out from there. And what road they live on. And if there's an address, an actual number address, that's in there too. And so we turned to the page for Weaver, and here's what we found under Eli. 12 of them. 12 Eli Weavers. And my friend said, "Yeah, I'm glad you chose Eli Weaver, because it's such an uncommon name." 12 Eli Weavers. Oh, forgot to tell you. It's 12 Eli Weavers in Holmes County. That's Holmes County. And I said, "Well, what if I had chosen Miller or Yoder?" And then he opened the book to a section that was already a telephone book of Millers and Yoders, so I'm glad I stuck with good old Eli. Now, why 1946? Well, I knew I wanted my hero, Bill Beck, to be a part of this book, with my created hero, Eli Weaver. So I've got Eli, and I've got Bill Beck. And so I started to think of where I would place them in history. 1949, Beck's last year to own the team. Well, doesn't seem to be the right choice because there's so much pressure. They just won a World Series. You know, it's kind of a rough situation to bring a kid into. 1948 was the World Championship year. Didn't want to go there. Didn't want to have anything I wrote in a historical book of fiction to intersect with a World Championship and mess with that. 1947, couldn't do that because that's Larry Dogan's year. And we're celebrating it this year in Cleveland. I didn't want to do that. I thought about, even later, I thought about putting him into the 90s, like with those great teams in the 90s. And I actually went as far as to write a little scene between Eli and Albert Bell. And as I was writing, I thought, no. Albert and Eli probably would not have gotten along too well. So 1946. A few of the factors of 1946 were extremely appealing. Vet bought the team, that's one. Number two, it was very difficult back then to print photographs in a newspaper. It was pretty darn expensive to do. So Amish do not like having their pictures taken. So that appealed to me because Eli could skate on a couple of things. And as you've seen from the graphics of the book, they're done in the 1940s cartoon style from the newspaper. The newspapers back then sometimes had as many as 3 editorial cartoonists. One would do the news, one would do the society page, and one would do sports. And at the Cleveland News, they had a very talented guy, and so I interacted with a friend of my daughter's who did some cartooning, and I sent him some copies of stuff I picked up at the Cleveland Public Library from 1946 Cleveland News. I said, can you duplicate this style? And he did. And then I thought, well, what would happen if Eli was on TV? That wouldn't be very good. So then I started poking around. Eli didn't need to worry about television in 1946. That's because the station that always prides itself being first in Cleveland, WEWS, didn't sign on the air till Christmas week of 1947. So there was no television station in Cleveland until Christmas of 1947. So I dodged that one too by choosing 1946. So I put Eli in a framework and in a place and in a time where he would have the least amount of disruption to his religious views as possible. Now, the cartooning aspect was really a lot of fun for me because if you've lived in this area for a long time, you probably remember Lou Darvis of the Cleveland Press. He also was a cartoonist for the Sporting News out of St. Louis, so he was nationally known. And I was trying to come up with that style that I think we replicated so well in the book. But every now and then, it didn't work out so well, and I had to actually be a model for our cartoonist out in California. And so for the picture that shows up in the book and on the front cover for the cartoon that was done, I actually had to pull our scale out of the bathroom and use it as third base, and then strike the pose so that he would get it all right. So, the fact and the fiction and why 1946 for this book. Right now, I'd like to read a small section of the book for you. And it's a section where all this stuff comes together. The ideas of Bill Veck, the idea of Lee Park. Normally, when I read a section from the book, I'm reading a section that comes from Cleveland Stadium and A Night in August. Okay? That takes place around the middle to two-thirds portion of the book. Here, I want to read, since we're where we are, a portion of the story that comes right here in Lee Park. This takes us to September 10th and 11th here at Lee Park in 1946. Only 2,504 faithful fans saw it, but the slumping Indians won their second straight and only their sixth in 22 games. A 4-2 victory over the Yankees, who came to Cleveland knowing their season-long pursuit of the Red Sox had reached its end. Eli had gone hitless on the day, but made a perfect throw from the right field corner to snuff out a runner trying for two, and a rally in the process. That earned him the cheers of his biggest fans. The knot-hole game. The neighborhood children would gather to take turns trying to watch as much of the game as they could through the cracks in the sliding metal door in the right field corner. The kids would call for him all game long, and Eli would let them know when he was going to loft some baseballs over the screen and onto Lexington Avenue for them. Before grabbing the streetcar back downtown, Eli would always sign autographs for them and even get into an occasional stickball game in the alleys near Lee Park. Eli's efforts that day also got him a big backslap on the way to the clubhouse from Steve Gromick. The right-hander had pitched decently but without any luck all season long, and at this point, just seeing his record go to 5-14 gave Gromick a little bit of relief as a hard year wound down. As usual, there was a stack of fan mail on the stool in front of his locker, but from 10 feet away he saw what was on top of the stack. A letter from his girl, Rachel. Dearest Eli, this note is short, not because I have little to say, but because I wanted to make the Monday morning mail in Mount Hope. Your fans are growing more numerous by the day here in Holmes County. The bishop wrote a letter to be read in every service today, expressing his displeasure at how tired everyone is on Sunday morning. The bishop feels the reason for this fatigue is his discovery that so many of our families have purchased farm radios and rechargeable batteries. The bishop actually came to our gathering to read the letter himself. He seemed to read it directly to your family. Though he did not condemn the radios by name, he made it clear that he was very unhappy. He said, "Now that the tools of the English are in our barns, when can we expect them in our houses? And is it not better to know how many hundreds Jesus healed from disease than to know if a right fielder is hitting 300? None of us could look up at that moment. Except for your little brother Lucas. He jumped up and said, "Bishop, Eli's hitting 348 after last night. They said it on the radio." None of us could look at each other or look up. Your mother did peek, and the bishop was very red before he asked one of the deacons to pray and sat down. Did we all laugh when we got home? Before God and you, I will admit, yes, we certainly did. I will not say if I have come to your house for frequent visits in the evenings recently, but I will say the many good hits you had in St. Louis and Detroit were very exciting and made everyone in the family very happy. Whether you are here or not, it seems you cannot help but create excitement. Ever yours, Rachel. Eli smiled, folded the letter, and placed it back in its envelope. Then he pulled it back out and read it again, and smiled, and placed it back in. September 11th, League Park, Cleveland. "So your bishop ain't a baseball fan?" Buster laughed as he tossed a wobbly knuckleball in Eli's general direction. The rookie laughed and lunged for the knuckler as it broke. "Guess not." "How many of your people bought those radios?" Buster asked. Eli snapped the throw back to his coach. "Well, if he wrote to all the weekly services like Rachel said, I guess the whole county's got them now." Buster laughed and pushed another knuckleball Eli's way. "Come on, kid, give me the knuckler. You had the hang of it yesterday." Eli pulled the ball from his mitt with his fingertips and looked at it with a high leg kick. When he finally released the ball, that was a darn good knuckler. Almost no spin, with a bit of speed. As Buster reached for it, the ball darted downward and plunked him in the shin. The coach smiled. "Best one yet, kid." 2-0 Cleveland here in the fifth, and now Bonham has to deal with Weaver again. The Yankee hurdler walked him last time, but this time there's nowhere to put him. Bases full of Indians. This at-bat could decide both teams' fates today, Jack. If Bonham can hold this rookie down, the Yanks are still in the game. And if Eli can get a hold of one, the Tribe will have some breathing room. Here's Bonham's first offering. Way outside for ball one. Weaver doesn't move his feet in the batter's box. He's got that big bat wagging back and forth. Now Bonham again, looking in for the sign and the windup. Here it comes. Ball two, a little closer, but still not in the neighborhood of East 66th and Lexington. Well, he's got to get one over now. He can't afford to go 3-0. Weaver, still rooted in his spot in the box, he's ready. Bonham winds for the 2-0. In the dirt, ball three. Robinson saving that one from going to the backstop. Not many lovers of the ballpark, not many lovers of the game in the ballpark today, but you can hear them banging their wooden seats. Here's Tiny Bonham now. What are you going to throw? He looks. He nods. He winds. Delivers. Weaver lunges and swings, and oh, look at it go! Way up, way over the screen, way out across Lexington Avenue. A tremendous wallop. 6-0 Cleveland. Jack, I don't think that was a strike. It was way outside. Weaver reached across the plate to get it. I think Bonham was trying to walk him with the bases loaded. Well, it didn't work, did it? Jack, from where we are in the press box, we could see the kids scrambling all the way across the street. They can't find the ball yet. Well, they might want to knock on the door of one of those houses over there. Might be in somebody's soup pot. Either way, Bonham's day is done, he's excused, and Cuddles Marshall will be on from the New York bullpen. There were rumors all over the ballpark today that Bill Veeck has been talking with Eli Weaver about a deal for next season. Bill, I think the kid's price just went up. Thanks a lot, Jack, Veeck snorted at the radio from the ticket house in the right field corner. And who might have been the source of those rumors, do you think? Ada smiled as she totaled up the ticket stubs collected from the turnstiles. Darn if I know, Harry Grabner said as he ran his pencil down the column, adding up the day's tape in his head. But he's right, Veeck said. Eli finishes strong. It might cost us another $5,000 to $10,000. Grabner flipped the page in the ledger to his right. Looks like pre-sale for the next 2 Sundays at the stadium are both over $35,000. Not bad for a team that's 33 games behind. Veeck leaned back in his chair, looked at the ticker. The Red Sox are losing. We're only 32 and a half back. Well, that should be good for another 5,000 fans, Ada said. And another $10,000 for the rookie, Grabner said sarcastically, if these rumors keep spreading. Veeck's mind was dancing with visions of 1947 glory. No comment, he said. Well, if you have any questions, here I am. I don't know how much time left. I have about 10 minutes, and then we need to get set up for our next talk. Hi, are you Robin?
I could be. Who's asking?
Anybody? Other question? Then you're all going to buy those. Okay. Yes.
What parts did you have the most fun working on, and what gave you the most difficulty? Right.
The most difficulty was pretty easy. When I got to the middle, I knew where I was going to end, but I wasn't quite exactly sure what the transition would be to get me there. And actually, the other part that I usually read when I'm in front of a group that comes from August, about a month before, once I had that, I knew I was going in the right direction to the finish. The most fun part to write, since I make a living on the radio, and since I am a frustrated play-by-play man, writing the play-by-play for Jack Rainey and Bob Neal in the booth. Well, actually, there was no booth, if you want to know the truth. If you were in the press box here hanging from the second deck at Lake Park, you were out in the wide open. The reporters, the radio people, the newsreel cameras, they were all sitting wide out in the open. There's no press box in that day like there is today. But writing the radio stuff, the radio broadcast, that was a lot of fun because I tried as best I could to look up catchphrases from that time that guys like that would have used. And actually there's a couple commercial mentions in the book as well. So I do mention POC, beer. They mentioned it. And I did that because I don't collect a lot of stuff as far as baseball is concerned, which is kind of odd. As a member of the Baseball Heritage Museum here, I like to collect stuff that has to do with Lake Park. And so actually I have now got 3 scorecards that are actually scored that I could go to baseballreference.com and look up the box score from that day. And so I can actually associate them with a specific day at this ballpark. And the ads in there were what I used to kind of fuel some of what the broadcasters were talking about on the air. So there's a lot of, if you're a Cleveland person, born and raised, you will find a lot of Easter eggs in the book that are just kind of laying there. I don't call a lot of attention to them, but of companies that still exist that get referenced. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun to try to make all that work and to make all the different voices work. Eli and Buster, where I actually talk in the third person and tell the story. Rachel writing letters. Eli writing back to her. The radio broadcasts. The audio from a newsreel that was done by Mel Allen, a fictional newsreel. Tying that all together, just changing the voices so that I didn't preach the whole 300 plus pages was also a lot of fun. Anybody else? Yes?
What's that?
A lot. Actually, you want to know the truth? I now have 5 ideas. 4 of them are sketched out. One of them, actually, I just came up with yesterday while I was driving home from work, and I haven't had time to put it in a paragraph yet. Only one of them deals with Eli. And actually, Eli is there, but he becomes a minor character in the next book because the story is basically about Eli's grandson, who grows up not knowing a thing about his Amish heritage. He is completely oblivious to the fact that he comes from an Amish family. Until some life events conspire and make him very aware. So, but that's as far as I go. Well, thank you. Oh,
How
yes.
do the Amish recharge their batteries?
They actually, they take them back to the store. This is kind of weird. I never knew about the existence of these radios until I was writing this. What you would do was, you would buy the farm radio, and then you would buy a set of batteries. And then you would run the batteries, and when you went back into town, you would gather your used batteries up, take them back, and then switch them out. And so it became, I can't imagine how much that would cost today. But, yeah, it seemed to work back in the 40s and 30s. And it connected people by the technology that was available.
Speaking of technology.
Technology
Yeah.
available. Yeah. Thank you for coming. I have copies of the book if you need one. I also brought my pen. I am always prepared to sign. So appreciate you coming, and I hope if you have some time to get you to stop and take a look inside the museum. Ricardo Rodriguez, who is the curator of what's in there, has done a really great job in the last year and a half. And there's some really cool stuff inside there. Some stuff that I do think Cooperstown would like to get a hold of, but they won't. It's going to stay. And it's some very good stuff.